I gotta tell you, I had a hard time with this lesson. Part of me didn't want to do it. Should I do this or should I not do this? Because it's a really weird, odd territory to be in. And it's like, I don't know. And then it's like, okay, if I do it, where do I put it? Do I put it at the beginning? Do I put it at the end of the course? Do I put it now where I'm about to do it? And the more I thought about it, over and over and over again, I kind of came to the conclusion that, well, if I'm going to do it, I probably should do it here, because this is something that you're not going to be able to grasp. And, well, you can grasp it quickly, but you're not going to be able to actually do it fast. It's going to take some, time and grade, so to speak, to get the hang of it. So I might as well, tell you about it now and, and go from there. So, what I'm going to be talking about is intuition, which is, again, extreme experience on autopilot. And in an even more general term, it's filling your head with things that your brain can work on to give you answers that you need somewhere down the road. And the key to all of that is, what do you fill your head with? Intuition and how it relates to radio. That's what this lesson is going to be about. Again, intuition, it can relate to a whole bunch of things, and it's really cool if you kind of get it down. But what I'm going to do is really stay close to radio on this one, because this is a radio course. At the end, I'm going to give you something that I happened to find out because I went to a doctor at McGill University. He was a professor there, not of medicine, but of philosophy. And that's going to be the little extra at the end of this lesson, which was pretty cool. When I went to this guy, he had some really heavy-duty clients. He had the Bronfman family, members of the Bronfman family. That would be the Seagram's empire, which turned into the MCA, Universal Everything, Universal Music, Universal Studios empire, which ultimately turned it into DuPont. These are like multi-billionaire people. And they would go to this guy, this professor there, because he taught visualization. And I happened to go to him because there was a guy in Montreal when I was there who he went to him for a past life regression. That's where they hypnotize you and they take you into your past and a little bit into your future. So I thought, well, that would be pretty cool. Let me do that. It sounded like it was fun. Anyway, turned out I couldn't be hypnotized. I could go under a little bit, but not enough to actually do that. So we ended up spending the sessions. He was going into the visualization for me, and he went into one other area that's really easy to do, and it works really, really well, and it's very much in the intuition area that I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to do that at the end. So how did I get interested in this? Well, I'm a PD, I'm an early PD, I'm at a pretty decent sized station. Station's doing really well, it's like I'm doing okay, everything's great. And then all of a sudden it's like, the station doesn't quite sound right to my ear. It just sounded funny. And I thought, well, what do I do here? So it kept bugging me and bugging me. I kept getting this recurring feeling continually, day after day, different times of the day. When I'm not even thinking about it, it would sort of pop into my mind. Ultimately, what ended up happening is I figured out what was wrong with the radio station, but I didn't act on it. To be honest, I was too chicken to act on it. It's early part of my career. Station's doing well. You had that old adage of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which tends to be not all that good an adage in this day and age with everything moving so fast. So I didn't do anything. Sure enough, when the ratings came out, they were down. Damn, sucked. That was the bad news. The good news was I already knew how to fix it because I'd been bugging me for months. So I instantly fixed it, within the day, and the ratings came back up again. A couple rating books down the road, same thing happened, and again I didn't do it. And again we went down, fixed it, back up again. And at that point, I vowed that I would never, ever do that again. Now, right at this particular point, by accident, I'm getting the car fixed. I can remember this vividly like it was yesterday. I'm getting the car fixed. I'm at a car dealership. You got to wait for the car, the oil change or whatever it was. I pick up a thing. They had Psychology Today there. There's an article on intuition. Okay. And what's in the article is pretty much, they describe what I put in about, the football video, the one just before this with Joe Montana. I just added in the Brady because it was easier to get video. Of Brady, it was a lot more of it than there was Montana, out there. So, and it all made sense that, yeah, if you, kind of like an AI computer in this day and age, artificial intelligence, you could build the most amazing computer and it could be like 6 buildings large. But if you don't fill it with anything, it's not going to be able to do anything. So you have to feed it data, continually feed it data, and certainly to get it to do something like, say, I don't know, say you wanted something in the medical field, you wanted to cure MS or ALS or something like that. Well, you would give it, essentially you would download WebMD into that computer. Everything about medicine that is humanly possible, you would throw it in there. And then, start asking questions of how, is there any links there, and, any contacts from one thing to another that might be an answer. That's what you want to do for programming, to be a good PD. You want to fill your head with as much as you can. A lot of that is already going on in your head. You just don't know it. Before I ever got into radio, and I'm a kid in upstate New York and in the Catskills. That's where I grew up, right by Woodstock, New York. And in that area, there's not a lot of local radio stations, at the time. And at night, there was virtually none that you wanted to listen to. So me as a kid and all my friends, we would listen to faraway radio stations. We would listen to Chicago, WLS, WCFL, listen to Boston, RKO and MEX, and certainly WABC out of New York City. Before I even got into radio, before I was even paying attention, I knew and I could tell that WLS in Chicago was a better radio station than WCFL in Chicago. But I had no idea why, and I never even thought about it. Only later years, when I started to think about it, you could start putting the pieces together because I had more data and more information to actually know what the pieces were. Again, that's what this homework is going to be about. So, homework and something a little bit more normal. What I want you to do, if you really take this seriously, I want you to start thinking about every song that you hear and try to categorize it in your mind. And it really doesn't matter how you're categorizing it, okay? And you can do this when you're in the car, you can do it on your own. There's no literal, write down music or anything. Every time you're listening to a song, I want you to think about the song more than, hey, I'm just playing this song and there's the artist and there's the title. What's the music style? Rock, alternative, country, pop, R&B, hip hop, rap, jazzish? What's the arrangement? Is it all guitars? Does it have violins? A full orchestra? Mostly synthetic music, steel guitar, throwing it towards country, some other instrument that pulls it out of a normal song, or something really distinctive like the drums in Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight. Does it have a piano or electric piano? That can change the song a lot. It can actually change the band and the format that it fits in. Try the Doobie Brothers on for size before Michael McDonald. Before he joined the band, they were rock. After he joined and added in the piano into the mix of what they play, very different band, and he crossed them onto AC radio stations. Has time and the amount of airplay softened a song? AC/DC, You Shook Me All Night Long, that was originally a hard rock song. Now, it's almost a ballad. Same song, time and familiarity softens hard songs. If you've never heard of the band, what format would you guess the song was for? Does knowing what the artist is known for taint the song? Give you an example, the Beatles. They were and are considered one of the best rock bands in the world. Rock band. But if you listen to Yesterday or P.S. I Love You, they're almost pablum wimp love songs. Except that they're not, because they came from the Beatles. Let's skip the singer for a second. What's the musical track alone sound like? R&B? Does it feel rock, country, alternative, pop? Listen to the track. Many times a song might have a white pop singer on it, but the track is really R&B and soulful feeling. That shapes the sound of your station because of that song. Maybe a lot of those type of songs is what you want to lean a station that way, in addition to adding actual R&B songs. And talking about the singing, what is the singing? Is it powerful, pretty, smooth, soulful, country? Country singers have a particular sound sometimes. Is it rap, singing rap? Is there falsetto? That type of singing, falsetto, is usually strong in the urban landscape. Is the singer's voice gritty like Chad Kroeger of Nickelback? The odds are super high that no matter how slow or quiet a ballad that he'd ever sing, it really wouldn't fit on an AC radio station, not because of the song, not because of the music, but because of his voice. It's hard for him to overcome that, to cross that format. Just because a song is slow or AC-ish doesn't mean it'll fit on an AC radio station. Lots of times the singer's voice just simply pulls it off the format. There's so much to consider, and that's what I want you to keep track of and try to train your ear to hear those differences and think about those differences, because you'll use those when you actually build and program a radio station. Here's one that comes up all the time. I don't know if it still does because I haven't done any testing in like 10 years, but 99 Luft Balloons and also Soft Cell by Tainted Love, Soft Cell. That thing those two would always come up with great scores, great scores. And you should power them and pound the crap out of them, just like you would maybe back at that time, Every Breath You Take by the Police. The problem is that the nuance of the song would be Every Breath You Take is sort of expected and would go in one ear and out the other. It would just blow right by people. You could play that thing every single day, day after day after day after day after day. Same thing with Hotel California, back then, and no one would blink. It's just sort of expected. It's the norm. But if you played 99 Luft Balloons, and it might actually test better than Every Breath You Take, it may test way better. If you keep playing it day after day after day, you're going to have a problem because it sticks out too much. That's the nuance of the song. And that's what I want you to try to pay attention to. Again, any way you can in your own mind, it doesn't really matter. Let me give you another example. If I say Stevie Wonder to you, he's got 50 songs that hit the Billboard Hot 100. All 50 of those songs were on the R&B chart also. And pretty much all of that 50 was also on the pop charts, for pop CHR top 40 radio stations at the time. But a few of the songs, like Higher Ground, Living for the City, sometimes Sir Duke, Superstition for sure, those songs actually got played on rock radio stations. And you go like, why is that? Why did those four qualify for being played by Stevie Wonder on a rock radio station, and occasionally on some classic rock stations you'll hear them come up now? And you go, why is that? And if you're used to just being in one type of format or one type of music, or if you didn't give it any thought, when you become a PD, you're going to miss that nuance of it all. So what you want to try to do, if you're listening to, again, say Stevie Wonder, try to be a rock PD for a second, and think of what they do, Van Halen, Ozzy, Pink Floyd, Zeppelin, and that type of stuff. Why does Superstition fit on that radio station? Again, not so much right now, but certainly back at the time when it was out, that was played. Why did they get away with it? Let me reverse it. Let's say it's an R&B radio station. There'll be almost no white acts, back ages ago, maybe even now too, that would actually get played on an urban radio station, but Elton John did. None of Elton John's song got played except one, Benny and the Jets. That fit. As an R&B PD, and there were tons of them who thought the same way, they went and go, all right, Elton John doesn't normally fit, but that song, I can play that one because I like that song and it fits my format. It fits into the boundaries, big one, nuance, boundaries of what I'm doing. Okay, I can pull that thing in. So that would be the homework to you. Try to think of every possible thing that you can think about. Is that artist got baggage, or, like Stevie Wonder, is the artist pretty cool that, or even maybe Marvin Gaye. I was actually listening to a jazz station in London, Jazz FM in London, and they play Marvin Gaye on the jazz station. You'll hear What's Going On, you'll hear Inner City Blues, and, and a few other songs. Yesterday, I was actually shocked to hear this one, because, it is a jazz radio station. They play a little bit more currents than a normal jazz station, but it's a full-on jazz radio station, not smooth jazz, jazz. And they played Ray Park on radio and Jack and Jill, and I was like, what? But as I'm listening, I'm going, yeah, you know what, this fits totally fine. It totally fit within the boundaries of their radio station, because their boundaries are like here, where a normal jazz radio station is like here. They had this other area that they can play in. That's the way their station was built. So therefore they can accommodate that. So that brings me to number 2 of homework. In addition to listen to music, it dovetails into, I think that one of the best things that you can do is listen to online, because now it's so easy online. You can pick them anywhere. Listen to as many different types of radio stations, particularly different formats that you can. If you're doing a country format, listen to a bunch of CHR radio stations. Listen to some rock radio stations. Listen to a jazz radio station. Listen to, an alternative radio station. There's so many areas, that you can listen to a radio station and pick out different things from what you're used to. So you want to be listening to different stations' music and how they rotate things and how they present the music, how their production is, how their jingles are, how they talk about the radio station, in promos and splitters. Do they just like fire off, Z100 and that's it? Or do they actually tell you something about the radio station? Do they talk in positives or do they talk in negatives? And 100 other ways of doing it. And what I mean by talk in negatives, a lot of things like, hey, we play the most music. That would be a positive. A negative would be that you tell the audience what you don't do so they have a clearer picture of what you do. We don't rock, we don't rap, we don't this, that, and the other thing. When you reinforce it that way, that's what I mean by negative. There was a radio station in Orlando many, many years ago, WMMO, and the PD was Carrie Paul. Carrie had an idea, and this station was hugely successful when Carrie was the PD. It's still reasonably successful now, but nothing like when Carrie had it. And his idea was, I'm not going to do anything that the other normal stations are doing. So they literally would say on the air, no stupid contests, and they didn't do contests. No talking over the music, and they didn't talk over the music. So basically it was, we're not doing this, we're not doing this, we're not doing this, we're not doing this. This is all the things that you say you hate, we're not doing it. Totally went a different way. If you're stuck in one area, you'd want to know about that. You'd want to know that something like that exists and that you can get away with it and it's really, really strong. And then you're like, hey, can any part of this be done in my market? Maybe I shouldn't be trying to headbang with another radio station or two radio stations that are similar in my format. Maybe I should go the opposite way like this one and build something going in the other direction. That's why you need that. And I would say tape it, because one of the earlier lessons, which I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but I'll put the lesson number, where I was going through software that allows you to tape radio stations and listen back later. You could tape, a different station every single day. And if you got a decent ride home in the car, just, put it on a thumb drive, stick it in, and play it on your radio, in the car on the way home. And, you're listening to a station in London, you're listening to a station in New Orleans, you're listening to one in Phoenix, wherever. It's funny, there's a getting off just a little bit, but it's important. There's a station in Orlando, Florida that usually is always in the top 5. And there's a lot of stations in Orlando, and it's a religious station. And it is, like, I want to say like Z93 or Z98, I kind of forget. But it's a religious radio station. They advertise in billboards all the time. I mean, all the time. They pound a lot. No TV, no anything else. And all their billboards say is, there's a logo, and it just says in nice colorful letters, all the letters are colored, and it's like kid letters, and it just says, safe for little ears. That's it. Doesn't tell you what music it plays, doesn't tell you who the morning person is, it doesn't tell you how many songs it plays, doesn't tell you anything about the radio station, just gives you a logo, safe for little ears. So you'd want to know that, you'd want to like, hey, let me put that in my arsenal of data. Maybe there's some way of using that. And also one last thing, as you're listening to different formats in everything about the radio stations, try to get the really strong ones, the really good ones, and also go out of your way to pick bad ones. Like I would go and look at a market like, I don't know, just make this up, like Denver, and I have no idea which one it would be, but Denver, what's the 25th radio station that's got a normal format? Oh, well, there's an AC that's number 26. Great. Let me listen to that as a frame of reference, because I'm hearing what good is. Let me hear what bad feels like. And let my mind percolate as to why this is bad and why this is good. Because your mind will start trying to categorize the crappy pieces of this one versus the good pieces of this one. And, later on when you need an answer for things, it's going to go, don't do this. Here's what you want to do. Or somewhere in between. I can remember there was a station in Detroit, just when I first got into country, which is when Garth Brooks sort of hit in the mid-90s. Garth was awesome. I actually met him a couple times, and He signed a picture. It was fantastic. Really nice guy. But there was a country station, WYCD in Detroit, and it was an awesome country radio station. But what was really interesting about it, it didn't have a country PD. The PD was a top 40 PD. That was his first jump into country. I don't know if he knew country or not, but he took everything that he knew about CHR and moved it into country, and he built an amazing country radio station, had great ratings, and the station is still there. It was a phenomenal radio station, and it was a full-on CHR, except that the music was country. And lastly, number 3, pay attention to the jocks when you're listening to those radio stations. It's part of the whole of number 2 of what the radio stations are doing, but also try to pay attention, and you might want to even go back through, take it in as, one big entity, and then go back and just listen to the jocks and try to gauge what type of jock you like, what kind you want on your radio station, and who's good and who's bad, and what resonates with you. And what resonates also with the audience of that radio station, because you can go and say, hey, is this a strong radio station or is this a weak radio station? Because there might be a radio station that actually does nothing. They hardly talk at all. They just read liners, versus one that's got some personality, that the people are doing things a little bit more in your face. Which one do you like? Which one appears to you to be better? Which one does the audiences like? And try to look at a bunch of different markets and do the same thing and go, and in most markets, this seems to do real well, or that seems to do real well. Lastly, let me go back to that guy McGill, the Professor McGill, the doctor of philosophy there. He had many of the Montreal Habs too, the Montreal Canadiens, the hockey team. He taught visualization, which is essentially conjuring up a vision of the future and in a particular way, which I'm not going to go into, and then you put it out here, there's the future, and the present catches up to this, and it happens. What he was telling me was, in the sessions that I was doing, because, again, I couldn't do the past life, I couldn't be hypnotized. What he was telling me was something a lot more mundane and normal, and this is in many, many intuition books by many other doctors. It's just one of those things that it's just fact. Your brain, you have 2 brains. You have a conscious brain and you have a subconscious brain. Your subconscious brain is always going. It's like a motor that just doesn't turn off. Where when you go to sleep, your conscious brain, it shuts down and rejuvenates for the next day. So what he would counsel people to do, and when he explained it to me, I'm going to explain it to you. And I have never mentioned this to anybody. Actually, I'm amazed I'm actually doing this on a video. But what his counsel was that before you go to bed, you could do it in some other time, but before you go to bed, it's going to work best because there's a lot of hours of you sleeping. Before you go to bed, you literally do this, as stupid as this is going to sound. You sit and go, hey, subconscious mind, I'm going to sleep now and I got a problem. I need you to work on it while I go to sleep. And I'd like an answer tomorrow or the next day or the day after. Don't wait any more than 3 days, but I need an answer. You have to believe that this will actually work, and you clearly have to want it to work. And remarkably, it almost always does. It'll give you an answer or a nagging feeling, or something will just start popping into your mind. You're making coffee in the morning, you're thinking about what to eat for breakfast, and all of a sudden, boom, cryptocurrency pops into your mind because maybe that was the question. Your mind is going to chug along on that all night long, and it's going to come up with an answer. And then it's up to you to act on it, which was the entire intent of this lesson and the entire lesson just before this, which is when you start hearing your inner voice, or you just keep getting a recurring thought over and over and over again, don't dismiss it. It may not be correct, probably is going to be, but it may not be. Just don't dismiss it. Bring it, front and center, and think about it and really run it through your mind, because it might be the exact thing that you need to do right at this exact moment. So hope that helped. Next lesson will be a very, very normal radio lesson. Probably, I'm not sure at the moment, but I'll probably kind of go back into Music Master and teach you how to do some section of that thing, something reasonably mundane and not as odd as this. Until then, see ya.